I took some of my major losses in business in my gym.
Yeah.
You know, I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the confidence you gain from that is I overcame it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
once you figure that you can overcome it, you don't stress about failing again, and your tolerance for risk increases.
Yep.
If
Yep.
you always win, you never face adversity. How do you handle it? The cash flow perspective of it for me is, hey, I'm going to replace this cash cow with long-term cash cows if this model doesn't exist 10 years from now.
Yep. Yep.
Let me take the cash flow from this and pay down my long-term rentals, where now I got sustainability. And now instead of my 2-1 cash flowing $300, I'm getting 1,200. Well, in 10 years, that 1,200 will evolve up to 1,800.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
put 10 of those together that I've paid off because they were 60,000. Now I got 18,000 in cash flow that I took from this immediate cash flow.
All right, we're gonna get started. I'm so excited to have Wilson Thomas on our call today. Right, this is just a straight conversation. We're just gonna chop it up with Wilson. I'll give you a quick backstory. I am Quentin Went. I work with PadSplit. This is designed around introducing more faces and putting stories to the wonderful stories that we have in our ecosystem. Wilson Thomas, I'm gonna let him introduce himself real quick. I met him when I flew out to Kansas City. And I was just telling him earlier before we jumped on here, I took so many nuggets out of our conversation that I couldn't wait to get him recorded so I could share it with everybody that's out there. And we'll get into those stories. It's going to be super interesting. But Wilson, give me a second. Tell me everybody who you are, what you are, define yourself. How do you not define yourself? Give me the scoop, man.
I would consider myself an entrepreneur. I got into investing in real estate post-COVID because I'm a gym owner. And in the Kansas City area, during COVID, they shut us down. So basically, I lost all my income. So looking at, from there, how to diversify, creating other revenue streams and something that is more mainstream um, wealth building than just, a 9 to 5 essentially. So honestly, during the time period in COVID, I learned a lot about investing, and it all started through TikTok, seeing different types of investment strategy. And as an entrepreneur, you always want to figure things out. Gave me that fuel to dig in deeper and then just start, learning more potential options and possibilities of what I could do from a real estate standpoint. Just dove in 2022. February 2022, I bought my first 3 properties, a 3-pack deal in February of 22, and now just been off and running.
Got it. That's crazy because when I started talking to you, this dude's been doing this for like 15 years. This is kind of his old bag. Like this is the game that he's in. What I've learned is people like yourself, and I'll be, generous enough to throw myself in that same bucket. There are not a mass portion of our population that can connect dots and then actually learn something quickly, dive into it, and then take either messy action or directed action. And I think that's the fun part is I am allowed to go and interact with so many people and meet people like yourself are like dot connectors. And it's hard for me to describe what dot connectors are, but it's like you can take an idea and then you can put your previous experience lens on it and then just realize like there's no reason why I can't do that, right? It's a matter of like I can figure that out. And that's like when you say you're 2 years old in real estate, I'm 2 years old in real estate. And it took me 2 years to kind of figure out how do I buy my first house as an investor. I've always wanted to own a house and I've always owned a house, but it was almost my personal house, right? But this is the first time where I'm like, wait a minute, what is the real estate game? And how come everybody I meet and everybody I talk to has their own version and their own story to it? But at the end of the day, they didn't start out. I haven't met a 3rd generation real estate investor. Not yet, right? Like everybody that I'm coming across is essentially, they're either 60 years old and they've done it for a while, but that's not the first thing they did. So I remember when I was talking to you, I'm like, yo, that dude had to play football or basketball, or he did something because he's a massive human being. Because what you see on this little tiny screen in front of you, that's like a third of, like not even a portion of the rest of his body. My man is a large human being who drives a large car, to support it. You started as a gym owner, right?
Right. And the thing is, the going back to what you said, I did play sports my entire life, and that is a main caveat in the day-to-day perspective that I take into the real world. When you play team sports and you play a sport, period, it's all about reaction and overcoming obstacles,
Yep.
you know? So those traits and things that you've established being a lifelong athlete, you just apply them in the everyday world.
Okay, so you have children. I remember we're talking about this, right?
hmm
I
I'm
have a
sitting here
child.
with my oldest. There's my oldest right there.
Oh,
Child.
hi. So same thing. I have a 17-year-old about to go to college, and we talk about the conversations in our house are way different than most other parents I've heard. It's like I have truly believed that confidence is a massive component to success, but you're not born with confidence, right? And what I
hmm
realized is that, like, as a parent, my job, I felt, was like, how do I keep putting him in situations where he's winning, where through hard work he's feeling what a win is, and then those little micro wins, they create momentum, and then they create an identity of a winner. And now all of a sudden, like, the fears that people can't overcome, the ideas of like, oh, you know what, I don't know if I can do it, you have
hmm
so much history of like overcoming something, you minimize the fear, right? So you become essentially a winner, as Dana White says, right? Like, just have a little bit of savage. You're going to run over the rest of the world because everybody else is they're just kind of soft, you know? So I love
And,
that. And I agree with you 100%, man. If you don't play sports, if you come from a sports background, you've got all the tools you need to be successful, especially in real estate.
and the thing you're saying too is I actually believe the opposite, meaning that I took some of my major losses in business in my gym.
Yeah.
You know, I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the confidence you gain from that is I overcame it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
once you figure that you can overcome it, you don't stress about failing again, and your tolerance for risk increases.
Yep.
If
Yep.
you always win, you never face adversity. How do you handle it?
No, I agree. I agree. I might have, I didn't mean to misspeak in that way, but I'm like, if you play sports, you don't live and die with a win. You live and die with the process.
Yeah.
Did I work? All right, the team lost. Great. They had a stud player on the other side too. But did I show up every day? Did I grind it out? Like in our house, my favorite word is grit.
Mm.
Because if you got grit, you will show up tomorrow and there's no different than yesterday. And it's just rinse and repeat. As it relates to what we're talking about here, real estate's a long game, man. Like we're talking about things that come through my reels and my feeds, like when we're talking about things with wealth in mind, which are long tail things, right? We're talking in years, decades, and generations, not hours, days, and months, right? Like people get
But it's a
paid in
matter of
hours,
perspective.
days, and months.
I that is a matter of perspective, because the thing that people don't recognize, when you say you're in real estate, there's a multitude of things you can do in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are in real estate to become rich.
Yeah.
So those are your flippers, your wholesalers, your transactional type.
Got it.
And then you have investors who are in it to build wealth.
Yep.
For the tax benefits and the long-term wealth that you can establish through it.
But even those
So
things, you can kind of mix and match, right?
you
You
can miss and match, but the thing is that it's like telling a flipper how many, if you met 10 flippers, you might get two of them that will look at holding their properties.
Yeah.
Because they're so used to the immediate income that they
gratification
get.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh, instant gratification. I'm done. Boom, I'm on to the next one. You look at TV, I watched HGTV, and you see these flippers. I seen a show out of Hawaii, Aloha Renovation or something like that. They flipped a house and they profited 952,000. That was their profit. So when you see that on TV, you're like, whoa, I can make a change with just that.
That's
I
not
think I
Jackson
see.
County.
Oh, no. You're not. Well, you know what? I did a flip, and I did about $250,000 profit.
Stop it. That's
Yeah, I
amazing.
did a 335 purchase, about 200,000 on the renovations, and it went and sold for 845. But that right there, that's an anomaly.
Right.
That was something. My main lender was like, we're just not seeing the numbers. We're not seeing how that happens. And I'm like, you have to look at, this is a corner lot in prime real estate, and it's what we're going to do is it'll be a very desirable. And the honest thing about it is that selling it for 845, we listed it for 950. And the reason we had to sell it for 845 was because it was literally probably a month past the ideal time to list. We listed in May. If we listed in April, it was probably a 1% interest hike that happened within that time period. So
Yeah.
it should have probably went for closer to 900, on that.
Sour grapes. Well, sour grapes.
Yeah.
All right. So give me a little bit of perspective. Like, how did you start? Tell me about the first deal. How did you jump in 2 years ago? What was the motivator for you? And then kind of tell me through that first deal. And then we're going to talk about how you got into the world that we're tied in through in co-living and PadSplit. But I want to hear about the first transaction.
So first transaction was I actually bought a 3-pack property. It was supposed to be 5. 2 of the properties were dogs, so I let those sit, and I got 3 properties. The first purchase, I was actually supposed to partner with someone prior to the initial transaction, and the partnership just didn't line up. And our initial goal for our first year was 5 properties, and the partnership kind of soured, so it kind of motivated me even more. So my goal for my first year was 10 properties. And I started with a 3-pack, 2 2-1s, and then 1 ended up being a 4-3. They all worked out. You learn. The 4-3 literally took me almost a year to get it through renovations and get it all figured out. Got it done. And then after that, I think my first year I did 11 transactions. 1 was the flip I told you about.
Yeah.
And then last year I did 20. And then I'm at 5 so far this year. So far.
So you're flipping a good portion of your properties and then holding.
No. I've only flipped 1.
Oh, okay. So you're holding most everything that you're acquiring. Got it.
And the initial flip, I was actually, when I purchased it with the intention of it being a primary residence, but the numbers were too good, and it was, it was just too big of a deal. So that became a flip.
Got it. So are you looking specifically for a buy box? Like, what's your sweet spot for acquisition?
So the sweet spot, so that is a great conversation, because I would say within the last roughly 2 weeks, I've really tried to dial in.
Yeah.
That's because of being in a position where I'm holding. What creates my buy box is what's the highest demand of renters.
Yes.
So the massive houses are not ideal. Even though, for example, I can get a 3,000 square foot house. There's literally one right now for sale for 60,000. Could put 70,000 into it, be all in for 150. It would probably ARV for 250, and of that 250, I could probably cash out 50,000.
Yeah, for our listeners who are out there wondering what planet you're living on right now, would you mind just telling people what market you're in, because your numbers don't make any sense?
Okay, so I'm in the Kansas City market, and the difference in our market is Kansas City is a very large city that sits on the state line of 2 states, Kansas and Missouri.
Yep.
But the problem that most cities have, just depending on where you get into this game or where that city is in its development, is every city evolves from downtown.
Yep.
It grows out. And then once it grows out, what happens? They come back in and they start to reinvest in the inner city. So I'm kind of ahead of that curve of them reinvesting on the inner city. So there's a lot of distressed properties and stuff in what you would consider C, D class neighborhoods.
Right.
And for me, a C to D class neighborhood is ideal because that's a high demand of rent. And now you go look at the fair market rent value provided by HUD on what our rental rates are in those areas, and you're easily, if you're at a 3-bedroom fair market rent in our market is $1,645.
Yep.
A 4-bedroom is $1,931. A 5-bedroom is above $2,000.
Got it.
A 2-bedroom is $1,265.
And a 7-bedroom PadSplit?
7-bedroom PadSplit is $4,300 is what my check was last month. That's a different story for a later time, though. So, but you
So
know what? That's a prime example. So we can talk about my PadSplit property. I bought that
yeah,
property for 67,000.
get out of here, man.
I did an ARV of projected of 250, no, 270. I did an ARV of 270 because I have a property around the corner that did 292. I put 65,000 into it. So I think on paper I was all in for like 140 of it. The appraisal on that property came back at 245. I took out 30,000 of it. I have a $1,600 mortgage, and it's
Yep.
generating about 5,000 a month gross.
The math just works in Kansas City.
Yeah. And the thing is like I looked at it as when I created it was a 6-4 with two master en suites, top
Yep.
floor and bottom floor, and 4 bedrooms in between, thinking being multi-generational living.
Yep. Yep.
And I put it on the market, just open market for rental at like 2,500 to see the demand. This was when I just initially heard about PadSplit, and I was
Right.
like, let me throw it out there and see. And we had a couple people come and look at it, but it was like, this doesn't look like it's on be suitable. So I was like, you know what, let me give PadSplit a shot. And then that's what I did. And I was like, best thing with it, because a big house like that, you're not going to rent. So going back to my point in my buy box
Yes.
is no longer a 5 or above bedroom house. I'm looking for 3 to 4. So if I had 10 properties, I would like, out of my 10 properties, I would like to have roughly 3 4 bedrooms, or 4 bedrooms. Yeah, 3. I'll do 3 4 bedrooms. I would do roughly 3 2 bedrooms,
Hmm.
and I'll do 4 3 bedroom properties,
And you're
just based
backing
on
that
demand.
into kind of like fair market rent, right? Because
I,
that's where
I,
demand
I'm backing
is.
that into the demand. I'm backing
Yes.
it on the ease of use to rent these. How
Yep.
easy it is to rent these. 4 bedrooms, you come across a good population of them. 3 bedrooms a little higher. 2 bedrooms now, not just with Section 8, but there's a community programs that are kind of transitional programs
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
they'll pay deposits and rents for everything for a person transitioning
Yep.
in
Yep.
life somewhat. So, 12, uh, 1265 is what you'll get from those.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. I actually have a 2 bedroom pad split. We were testing it and figuring out, just a 2-1, what we would get. And I had one side rented for one room rented for 225, but we failed to get the other room rented
Yeah.
on it so far.
Yep. So like I've seen some of those. I keep an eye on your portfolio as you're looking, because I find it educational more than anything else. More, I look at that from an analysis of you, the investor, which is interesting. Like from a data collection perspective, I literally I really respect kind of what how you approach the game. And from a learner's perspective, I look at it from that lens. So I appreciate you teaching from afar, even if you didn't know you're doing it. You
Well, I
know,
appreciate it.
I see that because you're an early adopter in our market in Kansas City. Like I remember when
Mhm.
we had this initial conversation, we're like, yeah, I wasn't sure if you were a scam. Like I knew it was out there, but I wasn't quite sure. And I was like, it's essentially what happens with a lot of new investors that are like, especially in a new market we open, right? We don't have 5,000 doors to say that this is what we've been doing for so long. But in Kansas City, it always takes an early group of adopters. This is kind of where I look at it. Like if I were to go back and look 10 years ago, 15 years ago as an Airbnb host, like if we knew now what we knew then, how would you acquire? How would you do things differently? And that's kind of the lens that I see the entrepreneurs versions of hosts that we have. That's the approach that they're taking. They're like, look, we got a solid 5 to 7 to 10-year run of this cash flowing product as it meets the need that's out there. Because right now, the biggest moat, right, is nobody else is doing what we're doing. No one else is addressing the targeted addressable market of workforce housing at an affordable rate And the way they're addressing it through like big old LIHTC and big multifamily and all these other things, it's going to take too long, right? There's a 4-year run for that product to hit the market, even if they could afford to build the thing, right? So in our world, I think that's kind of where our moat is right now, is that it's a race against other people who are building a comparable product. And that's kind of what we're taking advantage of right now. If you're early investors in these markets, nobody else is competing with you for the product that you're putting out there. Like, tell me what you think the market is for, like when you talk about demand and members in Kansas City, right? Who is
Hmm.
avatar? Who is the person that represents the consistent revenue that you're trying to build these products for?
Okay. So there's two things that you touched on. I'm going to follow up on. Great book, the 22 Infutable Laws of Marketing. If I asked you who was the first person to fly around the world, you're going to come up with who?
What's his name? Lindbergh?
Lindbergh is, but most people come up with Amelia Earhart because she's the
Gotcha.
first woman.
Gotcha.
So the reason I say that is because what you're doing, you're not the first, actually. You're just the best branded so far.
Yeah.
So that itself is one of the separators for you
Yep.
to help you differentiate yourself. And also branding and reputation, because you have to protect that, because that is the thing that will separate you from anyone in that. Now, the best thing is not only always be the best, sometimes it's best to be first.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Uber and look at Lyft and look at taxi, you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
You're going to be reciprocated. Now, when you're reciprocated, do you adopt things that are going to make you better?
Yep.
Or do you stay the same and die with it? And that's like taxi. Taxi's dying because of
Yeah.
it's not adopting what Uber did and Lyft, you know. So the avatar, as of right now, may not be the avatar as of later, and also based on our area.
Yeah.
So the avatar, for example, if I was there's an area west, southwest, they're building a huge Panasonic plant.
Yep.
And it's a 2-year project. It's going to be 3,000 jobs, 7,000 in total in that area.
Oh, wow.
Well, if you think for the next 2 years, my avatar are the contractors that are here just to work on that property. And we talked about this, getting
Yeah.
those relationships with workers on that. Now, my inner city is transitional, you know, but the transition is depending on where a person is in life and what are their needs. So, what I am seeing so far from my current property, which gives me an approach to like the second property I've been sitting on, the suites with the bathroom, and the
Yep.
suites do the best. I've had my longest tenure. I have not had turnover in those rooms yet.
The privacy of
Versus
the bathroom.
the
Yeah.
privacy of the bathroom
Yep.
is the
Yep. Yep.
biggest key. So
Mhm.
now the next property I have has 5 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms, and 3 of those bedrooms have their own ensuite.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So at the end of the day, it's like, hey, basically everybody has their own bathroom. Now that, from a price perspective, is going to be the highest demanding, rate, but also it may have the longest tenure
And
of
most
a
consistent revenue. Exactly. Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
So my avatar is like, who can I get in that can afford that 200 to 225 weekly rate, and that is in a position that's going to be transitioning for longer than 6 months.
Yeah.
You know
We
what I'm
talk
saying?
about like workforce housing a lot, right?
Hmm.
In terms of like who would you appeal to? And then the follow-up conversation internally is like, where is that person currently living? Because someone's got to live somewhere, right?
Hmm.
The lesson that I took out. So when I came to Kansas City, and I do it in every city, is like I will drive to a house, especially in newer markets, and just talk to the members who are there. And the two ladies I ended up speaking to, they were the ones that shed light on the fact that they transitioned out of a micro hotel. They're paying $85 a night for 7 nights, right? And essentially they were paying $200 or less a week relative to 600 and some odd dollars, right? So they were paying a third to live in a pad split, all utilities, everything at one price for the week versus living in a microtel in a worse neighborhood. And that it was great because it just reinforced the fact that like we were a better option for somebody. Like I always kind of view it from the lens of a value proposition. Like, come on, like what's our value to you, the member? Because that's going to make you sticky. You know, like this can't be cheaper, faster. That's going to be the motivator, but like you have to want to stay. And what makes you want to stay for 6 or 8 months? You know, it's because the best stories I heard are you are using PadSplit to make your life better, right? Like I'm going to save $400 a week in housing cost. And the people that actually take that money and like either lease a car or do something else, get out of debt, that person has a reason for staying. Because to live with somebody or live with in a house with 5 other people, that's a novel concept for Americans, right? If we were European, that would be like very normal.
Yes.
But in America, it's like, huh? You want to do what?
Well,
You're going to live with 5 other
I
people?
think depending where you are in America too, because if you go to a bigger city where the cost of living is a lot more, you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna stay in the closet for $200 a week, you know. So
hello Manhattan, right?
literally, exactly. And the thing is, my biggest exposure to the European, I was in Europe. If you ever stay in a hostel,
Yes.
a hostel will change your perspective of hospitality staying. Right there.
Give me an oil can with a lock. Let me drop my backpack in there, and as a cot I'm staying in. Yeah, okay, I'm cool with these 25 other people. Okay. And that's so normal. It was so normal, right? And this is my point is like we come here. I'm like, yeah, you know, I work with a startup. We do, you know, shared housing. They're like, what? The only people that
there's
like
areas though. I think there's areas.
I think as we get out of the big metro East Coast, out of the metro West Coast, right, and like we get away from those type of areas where like out of price pressure they had to do it. Like Kansas City can't be normal. Can't be normal in Kansas City. You know, like I was super surprised.
It is, but the thing is that we're going to touch on a completely different subject, and that's affordable housing.
Yeah.
You know, the reason I want to be in the inner city from a business perspective is because of all the factors that weigh against the people that live in the inner city. And that is, if I'm living check to check, how do I ever establish the opportunity to buy a house? I can never buy. I'm a lifetime renter. You know, I came from the inner city. I know what it is. And you know, from a family perspective, my grandparents are the only ones that ever owned their home. My mother's never owned a home.
Wow.
And the thing is, you see, is like, this is a prime market with a high demand because you have to live somewhere. So when you look at Kansas City from that, when you go out to the affluent areas, which there are some PadSplits in there, and I don't think they're doing as well because it's not a need.
Different need, which is interesting. I'll touch on that like as examples in Atlanta. As your market matures and the members get used to being a member inside of our membership at PadSplit, now they start looking at houses up and down the scale by neighborhood. My favorite story is a young lady who first found PadSplit, paid like $148 a week, lived with 8 people south of the city. And then after a couple months, she actually transferred, and now she pays like $220. And I had to call her because I didn't understand, why would you pay $80 more a week? And her response to me was, best neighborhood I've ever lived in. And at night, I just put my AirPods in. I go for a walk in the neighborhood. Never done that before. And then when I moved up here, because I wanted to get out of that neighborhood, I realized that the jobs in this neighborhood paid $8 more an hour for the same job that I was doing down there. So to your point, it's like when our members get more mature and understand that housing is just a tool. And it doesn't have to be this like huge weight that you carry on your back, paying 60% of your take home pay. Like if you can find a better alternative, you can leverage housing as a vehicle for financial improvement, which is kind of our whole mission statement is geared around that. But like that idea that the members will take advantage of housing to better themselves, right? Instead of it just being a utility cost and I have to pay and I have to pay, right? It is all right. Let me go look at my options, open my lens, and then figure out which one I can take advantage of. That's my favorite story. Like that's by far the best reasoning and understanding of how I think shared housing will impact workforce housing and workforce mentality. Is that like you're going to get to the point where you're like, look, I'm going to either move up, move down, move sideways, move location because I'm not tied to a 12-month lease. I'm not tied to some like ridiculous, $1,800 a month that I'm scraping by to live here, right? I can use a different way to attack housing as a value to my life instead of a burden. So
And
I
that's the
love it.
perspective that each person brings an experience and a need
Mhm.
to the table, and it goes back to adaptability.
Yeah.
Can this platform adapt to all the different needs and the growth? Because now you can ascend people.
Mhm. It just
Now you keep them in your
education.
ecosystem.
Yeah, education around it. Like one is introduce this thing, and then I'm going to teach you how to use it. Right? It's the beauty of it is that like we're going to evolve over time. And to your point, we're going to evolve over time, to be the best product market fit. Like that's our goal, right? That's our job to figure
Right.
out. All right, where's the ball heading? Let's get there, right? Let's get there before the ball gets there, right? And it's kind of like that's the beauty of it is the more people that hear about us, they themselves have their own plan, right? Tell me how you're going to use me, and then I can build for that. Like my favorite thing when I first came to this company was that I would meet hosts like yourself, and I'm like, all right, come on, tell me how you're bastardizing our tool set for your business. Because our reporting wasn't super good and this wasn't super good, but they had figured out how to jerry rig it because they understood that the operating business was good. We just had the tool, we just needed to catch up with the tools that they were already doing. And like that was my favorite conversation because the entrepreneurs like yourself had already connected dots. Like, well, I take part of this report and then I tie it over with this thing and I get what I ultimately need out of it. I'm like, pause. Why don't you just tell me what you need and we can build for it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you think about it. You think about let's gambling. Let's talk about gambling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at the evolution of where gambling is like I'm talking about over the last 50 or 60 years when they used to fill out a little piece of paper and
Yep.
people come
Yep.
pick that piece of paper and you got to track it in bookies and all that. Now that you can just make a bet on your phone, it tracks you, all that. It's evolution. And
Yep.
and it goes back to adaptability, adapt or die. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, we as Americans, we look for every aspect of convenience.
Yeah.
We're scared to do the work. And usually you just
Yeah.
got to do a little work to find that. And that's the thing about the entrepreneurial spirit is that you understand that you have to work to get some things, because usually if you're an entrepreneur, you're doing things that have not been done yet. You're not you're trying to figure things out in that.
Yep. It's messy. It's
Right.
messy, but to your point about perseverance, you just keep going.
Right.
Like the last man standing wins, the last woman standing wins, like that's the nature of the game. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it is like it's not, and this is the conversation I've been having recently. New hosts come on board and they're like, it's been 3 days, I have one booking, or it's been 11 days, I have one booking, it's been 15 days, I have three bookings. Like you told me 92% occupancy and you told me 17 days. And I'm like, slow down, slow down. And then at 21 days, I go and check behind and the room their house is like 85% occupied and I haven't heard a peep from them. So I text them an email or something. I'm like, we good? Oh yeah, this is great. I'm like, okay. I just want to make sure that you tell your friend next to you to not panic. Sit in your chair, relax, put your armrest and your tray up and relax. Like it'll be okay. because essentially the demand we know exists, right? How do we market
Hmm.
and get in front of more people so they know that it's an option? That's the battle we face every single day, is awareness.
Well, it goes back to instant gratification, because
Yeah.
if you look at any business that you start from the ground up, and these are foundational principles that you learn in business, your first 5 years are projected to be in the red. You're not supposed
Yeah.
to hit black until your fifth year.
21
So if
days
you're,
for us.
yeah, you see what I'm saying? So that's the whole point. It's like, if you do it right away and expect it, oh, it didn't work, then you didn't give it an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's that great picture I love to see all the time. It's two guys with pitchforks, mining, and there's these diamonds sitting there, and one guy is 1 inch, one strike away from getting to the diamonds, and then the other guy took the next strike and he got all the diamonds. you know
Yeah.
so you have to persevere, but you also have to, I believe, we talk about that fear. We talk about that if you're making an investment, it's for a reason. you know
Intentional. Intentional.
exactly. You
Yeah.
can't be like, I'm doing this just for right now. In that, and I was like, going back in depth of what we talked about, when you hear about the cash flow perspective of it, for me, is, hey, I'm going to replace this cash cow with long-term cash cows if this model doesn't exist 10 years from now.
Yep.
you know
Yep.
Let me take the cash flow from this and pay down my long-term rentals, where now I got sustainability. And now, instead of my 2-1 cash flowing $300, I'm getting 1,200. Well, in 10 years, that 1,200 will evolve up to 1,800.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
put 10 of those together that I've paid off because they were 60,000. Now I got 18,000 in cash flow that I took from this immediate cash flow of maybe it's a temporary thing. Who knows
Yeah.
where it is in 10 years?
So that was the point that I keep sharing this story. Like, if somebody's never built a portfolio or owned a portfolio, they have no idea how to utilize the things that are in their portfolio. When I introduce your concept to it, the people that own long-term rentals, short-term rentals, and they're like, I don't know about this as a model. We talked through, I'm like, well, I've got an investor and a host in Kansas City. He introduced me to this concept because for me, I own one rental, right? And it's the beginning of it. I literally heard you and I started laughing. I bought this thing like July 15th and is just now finishing up renovation. I want to literally choke myself, but every lesson that I could possibly learn, I've learned, baby. Like, this is the
Yep.
grad school of punching myself in the face in real estate. And I'm like, okay, like, didn't take a bath. We kind of learned the lessons. This is my undergraduate degree or graduate degree in real estate. I'll take it, right? This is the the,
Hmm.
the cost of entry.
Hmm.
But that's the conversation around these guys, is like, you're getting into a business that you can start leveraging cash flow differently, right? Like, you can start doing these things where it's a bigger play than just, I bought a house and I put walls up and I'm cash flowing. Like, this works for as you're building up portfolios. I love that. That's one of my favorite nuggets. But here's something that I wanted to always add to this, is that, like yourself, I've got this 17-year-old kid. And I sit around and talk to him and his friends, and it mind boggles me, the perspective difference. And it's no shade on them. They're just young, right?
Hmm.
So I'm trying to collect this collection of advice from people that are successful in my world. And if I had seats around a fire pit, you'd have one with your name on it, right? And you'd sit there, and the question that I would ask you is, what advice would you give to somebody who's about to start college and they're starting their adult life? Like, what mindset, perspective, or nugget do you have that you would give to yourself if you were starting out at 18 to 20 years ago, or 18 to 20 years old?
The difference between an asset and a liability.
Here's a book.
Rich dad, poor dad.
Somebody might read a book about it.
Like, what? Like
Dad, I
truly.
just have an earning problem. I don't have a spending problem.
Right. Yeah, that was for me eye-opening, because you are a product of the generation that raised you.
Yeah.
and the environment you lived in. So I will give you a perspective of what I grew up in. Find a stable job, be able to pay your bills, and hopefully one day be able to buy a home. That was it. That was the ceiling. That was
Yeah.
all you hoped for.
Success.
That exactly. It's not when you live like let me just give you a glimpse. So my senior year of high school, I'm older brother of I have a sister who's 6 years younger than me. She was a juvenile diabetic at age 6, type 1 diabetic. So my mom, had to pay for Medicare and stuff for her from an early age. My senior year of high school, she only made $18,000 a year,
Wow.
and she was
Raising a
single.
family.
Single, yep. So the reason I say that is because I was the first in my family to go to college, first to graduate, and I'm talking about not just my household, but my extended family too.
Yeah.
And that why is that important is because if I didn't go to college, I didn't have that experience.
Mhm.
And there's another book, if you're familiar with Eric Thomas, Eric Thomas, a motivational speaker. His story was you're setting an example for everyone behind you.
Yep.
When he was a junior in high school, he dropped out. Why he dropped out? Because his dad dropped out and his grandfather dropped out. And they went on into the workforce and did that.
Mhm.
He went on into, I think he said it took him 8 years to get his college degree, and he got a PhD, I believe. And the reason he said he did that is because I can look at my kids and say, if I at least did a PhD, you can at least get your degree.
Yeah.
So I bring that full circle back is because now the expectation of going to college for my kids was the expected. It was just like,
Table
this is
stakes.
what we're going to do.
Table stakes. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
now from a environment I was brought up in, the one thing that is missing, financial literacy.
Yeah.
I don't care if you go to school or not, you don't learn financial literacy to the extent in which you can really maximize it.
Because they don't teach sheep financial literacy, Wilson. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, you know the deal, right?
They
Like, come
can't
on. We're
control
trying
you
to,
if you're free.
right. We're trying to raise employees out here, man. Like, I've
Correct.
come to that realization. Like, I am paying a ton of money and I'm okay with it, right? God bless a 529 for him to go to college. But my expectation is that you come out with 4 things. And this sounds so corny, like, but it's real in my life experience. You have to learn finance, you have to learn marketing, you have to learn sales, and you have to learn how to raise money. Like, if you can leave school with those 4 simple concepts, I don't care what industry or business you're in, you'll be successful because every business needs those 4 pillars to be successful. And then you learn those in somebody else's business, how the process works. And then ultimately, my goal is that you will one day have enough gumption to start your own business and be an entrepreneur. Like, that was the household he grew up in with me. I grew up in a household of very much 9-to-5ers, right? Like, I used to wait for my dad to get off the train and walk down the street with him, and he lived a wonderful middle class life. But in reality, he went to the coal mine every day. He was doing some white collar stuff, but he had to go to work every single day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, the idea of like making money while you sleep.
Passive. Yeah.
My God, like,
And that for me was an eye opener because I actually that came. Let me say one thing. So you said 4. I would drill those down to 2.
okay,
Number 1, I would say sales.
yep,
That's the number 1 thing because if you can sell your idea yourself, you can always get what you need.
yep.
Number 2 is networking. Go find the people that are good at what you can do. And I think with those 2 skills, you can master whatever you need.
Yeah.
Because if you can network with the right people, you can sell them your idea to go figure out the rest of it.
Or
So,
they like you enough that they want to help you. It's
correct.
amazing how many people, if you choose your network correctly, they just want to help, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to be humble
Mm-hmm.
enough to ask, but they ultimately, if you surround yourself and if you give freely of yourself, where you're always helping, it'll come a time when they will come help you. Like I
Mm-hmm.
truly, truly have lived it and believed it. And I'm just like, oh, like give without asking. And then amazingly, it comes around. Like the takers of the world, like in our house, we always talk about like, like don't be alligator arms and don't be a taker. Like if you go to visit somebody at their house, like your number one goal is to be invited back. Start
Mm-hmm.
there and then, go from there. Like, but that's the reality of it, is that it's not so difficult to network correctly. I don't know. I guess I don't know if it's hard or not. Like it's the nature of like the life that we live, is like our circle of friends is very curated and very vetted, right? Like I welcome you with open arms, but if you're a taker, you're not really getting invited back, man. I don't have a seat at the table for you, like
Right. Right.
we love
But the thing is too,
interesting.
nowadays with kids, and we go back to the kids, is that communication skills, they lack
Oh, don't
those.
exist. Don't exist.
Eh,
Like my
So
kids are like
therefore,
active talkers because like yourself, you're not afraid to talk to anybody, right? Like, and you hold like unique conversations. Like my kids grew up with our group of friends that are yappers. We talk. My wife and I are A1 professional talkers and communicators, but like that's normal for them. And when they get around other people that do not like, and they're texting you next to you, I don't understand it, but like that's normal. And to the Joe Rogan, I mean, and to the Dana White analogy, like just be a little bit of a savage,
mhm,
like just be okay having a conversation with a stranger because you never know who that stranger is.
eh,
It's amazing.
yeah, and then that is like me naturally. I'm a natural introvert,
Uh,
but the number one thing that you learn is the power of proximity and the power of proximity. So, I told you about Sam Bakatar, who was actually um, the coach or mentor to Alex Hormozi
Alex, yeah, 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 yeah,
getting in
yeah.
that. Well, Sam Bakatar's mentor was Bedros Killian.
I don't know who that is.
Bedros Killian is he's in the fitness world. Fit Body Boot Camp is what he started, but now he's grew his brand out to more like the Joe Rogan type deal,
Got it,
the
got it.
manly deal. But the point is that he said when you go to a convention, for example, say you go to a real estate
Convention,
conference,
conference, yeah.
conference,
Yep.
and you see, hey, it costs $500 to sit there in the regular seats,
Hmm.
and it costs 2,000 to go be a VIP,
Yep.
and you're sitting in the same arena seeing the same information. People are like, well, I'm going to pay the $500. Well, the
Yes.
difference is the 2,000 is who it puts you around, the
Yes.
proximity, and what you gain
Yes.
from that. So, like, even in the aspects, I am a large person. I'm 6'6". So flying on the airplane is no longer, it's never been truly comfortable. But once you fly first class, you don't go back.
Not if you're six
Eh,
six.
Right.
So let's
Sorry
go
about
back.
that.
Six
Yeah, yeah.
six airplane, first class. Why? Proximity.
Proximity, because I have had more. I sat on a flight. I had my Apple AirPod or Apple Max headphones on, and an
Yep.
older lady next to me said, "Hey, what do you think? Do you really think those are worth it?" I'm like, they're not really. I mean, for the price, they're not doing anything great. I mean, it's $700 for some headphones. Let's think about where we are in life right now. Like, this is ridiculous. And she's like, "Oh, I'm thinking about getting some for my grandkids." And I'm like, I wouldn't spend it for my grandkid if that another.
Yep.
Well, she was like, well, not a big deal. I'm like, okay. I was like, how old are your grandkids? She was like 32, 30. I'm like, okay, great. So we started talking. And I was flying from Texas to somewhere, I don't know. And she was like, yeah, what do you do? And we just started a casual conversation. I was like, well, I kind of do a little bit of real estate and do this, this, this. I was
Hmm.
like, and yourself? She was like, well, I have a company in Louisiana that I fly from, and I have an office in Baltimore. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And she was like, I was like, so what kind of business? She's like, well, I actually sold a couple of the towers. I had a couple cell phone towers I sold. Okay, great. And she was like, yeah, I'll fly back and forth. And then literally just out the blue, I'll normally fly commercial back and forth, but I'll take my private jet anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? You have a private jet and you're sitting on a plane next to me. And we
Mhm.
just started talking. And she was like, yeah, we got into business, 40 years ago. We bought a couple of these cell phone towers. We had land, and they wanted to buy the land to put the cell phone towers on. So that started the business, and so on and so on. I would have never had that conversation with her if I was sitting in coach.
Nope. Nope.
And the conversation, it wasn't like, hey, here's my card, let's talk, let me invest. No, it was just like I learned some little nuggets from business in her experiences and stuff that I was able to take and infuse into my life and take away with
Yeah.
me.
That's because you're a constant learner, though. That's what I mean by dot connector. That's why I I just really enjoy your company. I enjoy our conversations because you are constantly connecting dots. What am I currently facing right now? All of these other inputs help me, right? There's no disdain for more information because I can rotate it, pivot it. Like one of my favorite games that I play on my phone is called Wordscape. I don't know if you have it
Mm-hmm.
on your phone. But
Mm-mm.
my favorite part about it is the letters are in a circle, and when you get stuck, you hit a button, and the
Mm-hmm.
letters pivot. And that I
Mm.
take that to business all the time. I'm like, all right, just tilt your head a little bit, look at it differently, and you may be able to solve and find the words that you're looking for. Right. And that's the most
Mm-hmm.
interesting part for me. It's kind of like what you're talking about. Like, let me take these little nuggets that she's talking about and how do they apply to my current business?
Right.
And that's the beauty of it.
And the curveball, this is the great thing. My grandfather, um, best nugget he ever gave me that actually is relatable in life more than I ever realized. Being an athlete, his first thing was like, hey, play every sport because you never know what you're going to be good at. Right.
Yes.
Second thing was the realization of when you're, an athlete, regardless what you do, and this was the importance of school, regardless what you do, make sure you always do your schoolwork. And why that was, he was like, you could be the greatest athlete and one day walk down the street. Someone can hit you with a car, you lose that. But even this, in life, you're going to lose those physical, you know, benefits
Yep.
that excelled you in that. The one thing that can never be taken away from you is knowledge.
Yep.
You can garner as much knowledge as you want. It's freely.
Yeah.
Now, at a later age, you may not be able to process everything you've learned, but it's the one thing that can never be taken away from you from anywhere else.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
So
I love the fact
when
that, like, as you're growing up, those pieces of knowledge, that perspective changes,
yes,
right?
yes,
So, like,
yes.
if you're constantly intaking knowledge, they may have said one thing one way, but because of where you were in your state in life, in your circumstance, it could hit you a different way and solve it. Like that's the beauty of it is like the knowledge
Mhm.
of like it's not so much they tell you what to do, you just start figuring out how to put the pieces together. Like MacGyver, like you can MacGyver your way through life with some knowledge, like
Right.
the beauty
And
of it. Like keep
and
taking
the
it in.
part the part when you say a dot connector, well, going back to sports and my mother was never a real athlete, but the thing that she could do is watch the game and know how I was doing psychologically. You know your kid. And she
Mhm,
said,
mhm.
always learn the game so you can play it better.
Yeah,
So when you say solve the problem, like dot connecting, it's like, okay, identify what the problem is, figure that out, and then you can figure out a solution.
yep,
And as long as you look at things like, hey, there's got to be a problem because there's always a solution,
yeah,
in it. It's just you have to learn how to pivot and say, hey, how do I adapt to this moment to overcome it?
that's awesome. That's so good. I'm gonna have to actually end it on that. That's crazy, man. Next time I call you, it's just gonna be on the phone to just chop it up. but like, dude, I've stolen an hour of your life, and I am super grateful that you gave it to me. Like, I just love talking to you. It's always good.
I appreciate it. It has been nothing more than a pleasure for me. I love to converse and to. It's almost like noodle. We're noodling. We're just noodling.
That's it.
We're thinking
It's
about different
you know.
things, and we're taking perspectives away from the conversation that are going to be relatable to other things that's still going in, not just today, but the rest of my year.
Yep. So this is William Thomas. He's a father, an investor, an entrepreneur, and a dot connector, and a constant learner. Those are great things, dude. Like, those are all compliments in my world to you. So I appreciate you being in my life. I appreciate you being my friend, and I'll talk to you soon.
I look forward to a long relationship.
This is so good. Thanks, Wilson. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, Quentin. Have a great day.
Thanks.